James Carter, an experienced astronaut, awoke to the sharp smell of burning circuits and the stinging bite of smoke in the air. The flickering lights of the cockpit barely illuminated the chaos around him. Every warning light blinked in unison, signaling that the ship, his once reliable vessel, was now nothing more than a falling, broken shell. Panic surged, but years of training kicked in. His hands moved over the manual controls, trying to stabilize the descent, but the ship was already at the mercy of the unknown planet's gravity. The hull groaned, metal shrieking as it strained against the atmospheric pressure. "Stay with me," James muttered through gritted teeth, sweat beading on his brow. He wrestled the controls, redirecting power to the thrusters, though he knew it was a desperate move. The endless expanse of green rushing up to meet him from below a massive forest was his only chance. The ship plunged through the forest canopy, branches snapping and tearing at the hull. Inside the cockpit, everything rattled violently, and then, with a deafening crash, the vessel lurched to a stop, cradled in the massive arms of the alien trees. James' head slammed against the console, and everything went black. When he finally awoke, there was an eerie stillness. No alarms, no creaks, no groaning metal, just the quiet hum of the forest surrounding him. Groaning, he unstrapped himself from the pilot's seat, testing his limbs for any signs of injury. Sore, but intact. A glance at the cracked control panel told him what he already feared: the ship was a lost cause. The emergency beacon, though operational, would be a silent scream in this remote part of the galaxy. No one would hear him. James gathered what gear he could: a portable comm unit, a few rations, and a small medkit before making his way out of the ruined craft. As he descended into the dense alien forest, his senses sharpened. The towering trees, bathed in a soft, otherworldly glow, stood like silent giants, their bark shimmering as if alive. The air was thick with the scent of vegetation, damp and ancient, and the sounds of distant creatures echoed through the canopy. Every step he took felt like an intrusion into a world untouched by human hands. Despite his growing sense of isolation, the explorer in him marveled at the beauty of this place. Even in the face of potential danger, there was an undeniable allure to the vibrant, almost ethereal environment. The colors seemed more vivid than on Earth, the light softer, yet sharper. But with each step deeper into the forest, that initial awe gave way to an unsettling feeling he wasn't alone. Hours later, as he moved through the alien landscape, James' heart nearly stopped. Ahead of him, through the thick underbrush, he saw something he couldn't quite believe: a city. It was unlike anything he had ever seen: structures that seemed to grow out of the very trees, blending seamlessly with the surrounding nature. The city was alive, pulsing with soft lights that illuminated the paths between towering organic towers. It was quiet, too quiet, like the hum of a sleeping beast. For a moment, James stood frozen, captivated by the harmony of it all. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have sworn such integration of nature and technology was impossible. Then movement. Shadows shifted around him, and suddenly he wasn't alone. From the trees, figures emerged, humanoid but not human. Their large, glowing eyes reflected the dim light, their skin shimmering like the surface of water beneath moonlight. They moved with an unsettling grace, their steps soundless on the forest floor. James slowly raised his hands, a gesture of peace, though his heart pounded in his chest. "I come in peace," he called out, his voice betraying the tension he felt. "My name is James Carter. I'm from Earth. My ship crashed. I need help." One of the figures stepped forward, the tallest among them. Her eyes glowed faintly, and when she spoke, her voice was a soft, melodic echo in his mind, as though it bypassed sound entirely. "You are not from Koria," she said. It wasn't a question. James hesitated, still trying to grasp the situation. "No, I'm from Earth, a distant planet. I need to contact my people." The alien, who introduced herself as Lyra, studied him for what felt like an eternity, her expression unreadable. Then, with a slight nod, she gestured toward the heart of the city. "Follow me. The council will decide what is to be done with you." As they walked through the city, James couldn't help but marvel at its design. The buildings, if they could even be called that, seemed to pulse with energy, alive in a way he had never imagined. They were part of the landscape, grown rather than constructed. The streets were lined with luminescent plants, casting soft, natural light. It was as if the city itself was a living organism, symbiotically connected to the forest around it. He felt small here, a visitor not just to another world, but to a civilization that had evolved far beyond his own. The Korians, as Lyra had called them, moved with purpose and ease, their glowing eyes betraying no hint of fear or curiosity toward him. It was as if they had seen many like him before. When they arrived at the central structure, a vast dome that glowed softly with an inner light, James was led inside. The interior was vast and open, the walls alive with shifting colors and patterns. At the center of the room sat a council of Korian elders, their eyes glowing brighter than Lyra's, their forms tall and graceful. They regarded James with a mix of curiosity and caution, their expressions unreadable as he stood before them. Lyra stepped forward and introduced him again, this time in their melodic language. James stood silently, feeling the weight of their collective gaze. The air was thick with tension. He knew that whatever happened next could determine not just his fate, but perhaps the fate of his people. After what felt like an eternity, one of the elders finally spoke. His voice was deep and resonant, echoing in James' mind in the same way Lyra's had. Your arrival was not unforeseen. James blinked, surprised by the statement. You knew I was coming. The elder nodded slowly. We have observed the humans for some time, watching as they reached for the stars. Your journey has been fraught with peril, but it has also shown great promise. The question is whether your kind will choose the path of wisdom, or of destruction. James swallowed, feeling the enormity of their words. We're not perfect, he admitted, his voice quieter now. But we want to be better. We seek knowledge, not conquest. If you give us the chance, we can learn from you, and you from us. The elder's eyes shimmered, as if contemplating his words deeply. Finally, after a long pause, he spoke. We will help you return to your people, James Carter. But know this: how you treat the life you encounter, how you wield the power you have, will determine your future in this galaxy. Relief flooded through James. Thank you. I promise, we won't let you down. As the council deliberated in soft telepathic murmurs, Lyra placed a hand on James' shoulder, her gaze softer than before. Your people are on the precipice of something great, James Carter, she said quietly. But greatness carries a heavy responsibility. Be wise in your choices. He nodded, the weight of the galaxy now resting heavily on his shoulders. As he prepared to leave the council chambers, the stars above Koria sparkled with infinite possibilities and just as many dangers. Far from the tranquil forests of Koria, the halls of the Galactic Council station buzzed with tension. Earth's induction into the Council had been celebrated as a monumental achievement, the result of decades of diplomacy and technological advancement. Yet beneath the surface, not all was well. The sudden rise of humanity in the galactic stage had unsettled many of the older, more powerful factions. Captain Elias Ford stood in the heart of the council chambers, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes upon him. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the vast room, their forms casting strange shadows beneath the glowing lights of the chamber. Some were tall and imposing, with iridescent scales that shimmered in the light. Others were ethereal, their translucent forms almost blending with the environment. But all of them shared the same expression, a mix of weariness and suspicion directed squarely at Ford. A holographic map of the galaxy hovered above the central podium, displaying a sector where human expansion had been most active. The murmurs in the room grew louder as the elder representatives began to voice their concerns. The humans are spreading too quickly, hissed one of the delegates, a reptilian creature from the warlike Drar Dominion. Their colonies are expanding beyond their borders, threatening the balance we have maintained for millennia. They are unpredictable, added another delegate, her translucent skin glowing softly under the chamber's light. They must be stopped before their ambition disrupts the harmony of the galaxy. At the back of the room, Captain Ford stood tall, his expression unreadable. He had expected resistance, but the intensity of the accusations took him by surprise. He had come here to ensure Earth's peaceful integration into the galaxy, not to spark conflict. Captain Elias Ford waited for the murmurs in the council chambers to subside. Every breath he took felt heavier than the last, the weight of humanity's fragile position pressing down on him. He hadn't expected open hostility so soon after Earth's induction into the Galactic Council, yet here he was, defending not just Earth's reputation but its future. The humans are aggressive, growled one of the elder delegates, a hulking reptilian figure from the Drar Dominion. His scales shimmered in the dim light, and his voice echoed across the room. Their expansion is reckless and threatens the stability we've maintained for centuries. Ford took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the room. Some of the delegates nodded in agreement, their distrust evident in their expressions. He could sense their unease, their fear that humanity would upset the delicate balance of power that had existed for millennia. But he also saw hope in the eyes of others, species that had long been marginalized by the Council's older factions, species that might see humanity's rise as an opportunity for change. "I understand your concerns," Ford said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Earth has expanded quickly, yes, but we have done so out of necessity. Our world is fragile, and our people are driven by a desire to survive. But let me be clear, we have no desire for conquest. Our goal is cooperation. We seek to contribute to the greater good of this galaxy, not disrupt it." A murmur rippled through the room, and Ford could feel the eyes of the Sikh's representative, a tall insectoid creature, fixed on him. The Sikh's delegate raised a hand, silencing the room. His voice was calm but edged with disdain. "You speak of cooperation, Captain Ford, but history tells a different story. Your species has known only war, conflict, and destruction. How can we trust that you will not bring the same chaos to the stars?" Ford felt the anger rise in his chest, but forced himself to remain calm. This was a trial of Earth's worthiness to stand among the stars. "We have learned from our past," he replied firmly. "Yes, our history is marred by conflict, but that is why we value peace all the more. We have come here not to repeat old mistakes, but to forge a new path." The room fell silent. For a moment it seemed Ford's words had reached them, but then another voice, colder and more cutting, interrupted. Or perhaps came the voice of Sal, a sleek, amphibious being from the Thorian Dominion. "You are merely biding your time, waiting for the moment to strike." Ford's eyes narrowed, recognizing the tactic for what it was: sabotage. The Thorians were among those who felt most threatened by Earth's rise, their own position as a major power precarious. The Dominion had thrived on maintaining control through political manipulation, and now they were attempting to cast Earth as a threat. "We have no such intentions," Ford said, his voice firm. "Our only goal is to build alliances, to learn from those who came before us." Saul tilted his head, his eyes gleaming with something predatory. "That's what concerns us. Your kind learns too quickly." Ford's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the room shifting, doubt and suspicion beginning to creep into the minds of the other delegates. He had to act, and fast, or Earth's diplomatic efforts would be shattered before they even truly began. Just as Ford opened his mouth to speak, Tom Hayes, Earth's observer on the Council, stepped forward from the shadows. His presence had been quiet until now, but he had always been watching, listening. "If I may," Tom said, his voice measured and steady. "We too were once observers. We've seen how the Council operates, how power is maintained. But Earth offers something different." The Council delegates turned to face Tom, their attention caught by his calm confidence. "What Earth offers," he continued, "is hope. Hope for a future where power is not hoarded by a few, but shared by many, where cooperation leads to progress. We are not here to take. We are here to build." A silence settled over the chamber, the weight of his words hanging in the air. For the first time since the meeting began, Ford sensed a shift. The suspicion and doubt were still there, but now there was something else: a flicker of curiosity, a glimmer of possibility. Meanwhile, on Koria, James Carter stood in the heart of the Korian city, his mind racing with the implications of the Council's decision. The Korians had agreed to help him, but they had also warned him of the fragility of Earth's place in the galaxy. The choices his people made in the coming days could determine whether they were remembered as creators or destroyers. But as James prepared to leave, Lyra's face darkened with concern. "There is something else," she said quietly, her glowing eyes filled with worry. James turned to her, his heart skipping a beat. "What is it?" Lyra led him through the winding streets of the city, deeper into the forest, until they reached an ancient chamber hidden beneath the roots of the trees. The air was thick with a strange energy, and at the center of the chamber stood a massive crystalline structure, pulsating with a faint, rhythmic glow. "This is the artifact," Lyra explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "It has been dormant for centuries, but recently it has begun to awaken. Its energy is growing, and we do not know why." James stared at the artifact, feeling a deep sense of unease. The structure was ancient, far older than anything he had ever seen, and it radiated a power that seemed to pulse through the air itself. "What is it?" he asked, his voice hushed. Lyra shook her head. "We do not know. It is beyond even our understanding. But we do know this: if the artifact continues to destabilize, It could tear Koria apart and send shockwaves across the galaxy. James' blood ran cold. This wasn't just a Korian problem. If the artifact was connected to the fabric of space and time, as Lyra suggested, it could threaten far more than just this planet. "We need to stop it," James said, urgency creeping into his voice. "But if you don't know how, then?" Lyra's eyes locked onto his. "That's why we need your help. Earth's technology, your researchers might hold the key to containing this power. But we must act quickly." James swallowed hard, the weight of the responsibility crashing down on him. He had come to Koria by accident, but now it seemed that fate had placed him here for a reason. This artifact could tear the galaxy apart if left unchecked. He couldn't return to Earth without ensuring its safety. "I'll get help," he said, his voice resolute. "We'll figure this out. Together." Back on the Galactic Council station, Ford's team was racing against time. The Thorians had planted agents across human space, working in the shadows to provoke conflict. If their plan succeeded, Earth would be cast as an aggressor, and the Council would have no choice but to sanction military action against them. Tom Hayes, now fully immersed in his role as Earth's diplomatic shield, had uncovered evidence of the Thorians' plot. The agents were preparing to stage an attack near New Ceres, one of Earth's most promising colonies, and frame Earth as the instigator of a military conflict. Captain Ford stood at the center of the ISA Starbound's command room, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. His jaw tightened as the situation unfolded before him. "If this attack goes through, we're finished," he said, his voice grim. "The Council will have all the justification they need to turn against us." Ambassador Helena Ortiz, standing beside him, nodded. "We need proof. Something that will expose the Thorian agents before the attack happens." Tom, who had just entered the room, spoke up. "I've been building contacts within the Council for months. If we move carefully, we can get close to the agents without raising suspicion. But we'll need to act fast." Ford nodded, his mind already calculating the next move. "We'll send a covert team to New Ceres. But we need to keep this quiet. If the Council catches wind of this, it'll only confirm their suspicions." The plan was risky. If the team was caught, it would only fuel the Thorian narrative. But they had no choice. Earth was on the edge of destruction, and the only way to pull it back was to expose the truth before it was too late. As James Carter prepared to leave Koria, the tension in the air was palpable. The artifact's energy was growing more unstable by the minute, and the Korians had entrusted him with a monumental task: return to Earth, gather the resources necessary to contain the artifact, and prevent a galactic catastrophe. Lyra stood beside him as he boarded his repaired spacecraft, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. "The fate of many worlds rests on this," she said softly. "We trust you, James Carter. Do not let us down." James looked at her, his expression determined. "I won't." As his ship ascended into the sky, leaving the alien planet behind, James couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was on the precipice of something far greater than any one person, any one species. And humanity's role in it was still being written,